This is the Tapped In Podcast, the podcast for beverage distributors that want to empower their sales team to drive business results. Listen up and welcome back to another episode of the Tapped In Sales Podcast, your podcast for beer distributors by beer distributors. This is episode 94. I'm getting better at knowing the episode numbers because I'm trying to plan better. I am here with Moneyball Ross and Silver Fox himself, George. Data Mike is on the road flying back. He's too lame to get back early because he got caught in the storms on our travel this week. But, you know, that's the way it goes. He's the one who booked American. I flew Delta and flew on time, but, you know, that's why
there's only one airline. Well, there's a couple airlines worse, but United's certainly worse.
United's certainly worse, yes. Oh, I love it. But one of the things, boys, that I found out this week, I thought this was awesome. You're going to get a kick out of this. So I'm in South Texas, right? Might as well be North Mexico. Beautiful area. Cannot wait to go back. Not very far away from where SpaceX is. And I go into one of these little Mexican grocery stores, right? And I'm walking around like I always do. I'm walking around, always looking around, and I stumble upon these coolers that are in the aisle where all like the chips are, right? And I walk over and I'm like, I wonder why these, like, are they selling these coolers or whatnot? And I open one up and they're warm. And it's all the warm tortillas from the tortilla factories locally that they deliver warm, hot, fresh tortillas every morning at like 5:30 a.m. to these grocery stores. And you can go in and buy fresh, hot fresh, hot tortillas. And this gringo had no idea you could do that somewhere in the world. And I thought it was awesome. So I scooped some up and brought them home.
Don't tag the image of where it is. The health department might be getting on them.
I'm not. Have you guys seen this before?
I haven't, but a friend of mine said anytime he's in Texas, he goes into HEB because every day they make their tortillas fresh, and he'll buy a bunch of bags and bring them back to St. Louis.
Yep. So they do this in HEB as well. Or if you go to one of the little Mexican grocery stores, you're going to see competing brands and a little competition between. You could find a lot of different stuff, but you got to love that. So that was the fun thing I saw from the week. That was awesome. Cool area, lots of growth, lots of opportunities, lots of change too with everything that SpaceX is doing out on South Padre Island and everything else. Good to see I didn't get to personally see a SpaceX launch, but one of the reps showed me the SpaceX launch while they were standing on top of the Hard Rock Hotel. And this was the launch where one of the rockets comes down and it gets caught by the little launch pad thing. It's pretty sweet.
They call it Godzilla, I think.
It's something like that. It's a big old sonic boom after that sucker lands, too.
Well, they're launching another Starship here soon, I think.
He's got 27 launches planned this year, I think.
Well, he keeps changing the damn design. I mean, he's got the new Raptor engines and the thing's like 20% bigger than the first one. He can't just be happy with where it is.
No, it has to always change. Did you ever see the picture of what the first one looked like to what the current version looks like and how different it is? It's incredible.
What's crazier is when you stack it up against like the space shuttle and like the Saturn V and just how big this damn thing is. He's launching a skyscraper into space. And when it comes back, that booster, they catch it, it's a damn skyscraper.
It's incredible. Yeah, it's incredible. Really cool. Well, cool area, awesome time, fun experience. We'll come back, repeat customer for sure. Food was great. Tons of great restaurants, tons of great food. Can't wait to go back. But George was on the road this week up in Minnesota. Had some fun. You survived the cold, right, George? Wasn't too cold up there?
No, just a balmy -4 this morning. So, what I always love going there is that it helps me appreciate just how warm 32 degrees is.
That is true. Yes. I'm a lizard now, so I would freeze to death. I'd, fall out of the tree like a classic iguana and everything else.
What's the saying? Once you get below 0, it's all just cold.
Once you get to 40 to 30 degrees, it is all just cold. I love it. Well, we're on the back half of dry January, boys, and some of the questions that have come up as I've been out in the market, and you guys have probably been talking to your friends as well, is like, is dry January dead? there's a couple of our articles in news. You can see some of the pushback around, hey, should we really like be lame and not drink alcohol anymore? Should we have a little bit more fun? Is California sober really a thing, right? Like, is dry January, but still drinking Delta 9 or smoking dope still, okay? Does that still count as dry January, or is it just about stopping to drink alcohol? So, have you guys seen any of this with your friends? I haven't noticed it as much this year as I have in years past, but that's a little bit anecdotally because I've been traveling around the country so much.
Yeah, my dry January is pretty much the same. I usually start with a dry hopped hazy IPA, occasional dry red, and once in a while a dry white.
Very damp. It's a very damp January.
It's very dry. All of them are very dry.
What about some dry vermouth? Some of that too?
Dry vermouth.
I haven't tried that. I might need to add that to my repertoire.
Yeah, you can make. What do you make with those? What's the drink you make with a vermouth?
And then Manhattan? I don't know.
I don't know.
Drinks you make, I think you can make a martini with it.
Yeah, I think it's right. I think it's a martini.
Yeah, you're right.
Look at us. We're a great example of being in the alcohol industry.
Well, I mean, we're not big liquor guys, right? A classic dry martini, a Manhattan as well, a Negroni. Those are all good ones that you're thinking about. You could throw a spritz in it. I don't drink a lot of vermouth because I don't like the taste of it. So, but I did go to Reyes out in California a couple weeks ago. While I was waiting to hang out with my sister, and she had the audacity to call Reyes like a what did she call it? She said, "Oh, it's just like one of those chain, Italian restaurants." Like, no, there's 3 of them in the world. It's like one of the best Italian joints you can go to. And this guy was crushing, the bartender was crushing martinis all night long. He made one right after another, after another, after another, after another. So I, of course, partook as well. I have had a very damp January.
I was just talking to somebody at the event I was at, and they're like, "Oh, I was at this last year, and it was, dry January." And he goes, "I ain't making that mistake again this year."
Ross, what about your friend group?
I mean, I find myself in more and more social situations where there's no drinking at all.
Really?
Not by my choice.
Yeah.
And I'm actually starting to, I'm getting the opposite side of the guilt, where it's like, I don't know if I want to be the only one drinking.
Interesting.
And they're drinking tea, and it's like that episode of what's the Dirt Water,
Mud Water.
Ted Lasso. He had the best quote about the freaking tea.
It's just dirty water.
It's like mud water, dirt water.
Yeah.
And everybody's sitting around drinking it. I can't.
Do you think it has to do with where your kids are in their age gap right now, Ross, and your friend group, or do you think it has to do with just more of who you're with right and hanging out right now?
I don't know.
None of your friends listen to the podcast, so we can talk sleep about them.
I mean, the kids. I mean, obviously, as the kids get older, we get more, get more socialized with like their peers and their peers' parents.
Mm-hmm.
And since we go to Waldorf school, there's just not a lot of alcohol consumption going on.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I do notice the vibe shift around it, right? You can see that the bars were busy, being out on a more regular basis in January, that there are still people out drinking. There are, plenty of folks, partaking and having fun with it and not paying attention to it. I can see where it's migrating away from like it's an event as that it is dry January to more of a spectrum of moderation. Like that would be where I would put it. Is it changed from, dry January where it was a thing we dabbled with or really kind of dedicated ourselves to that, where now it's people have kind of backed off. If you want to moderate, people have backed off and have been partaking in moderation more and more. And that spectrum of moderation has changed. As I watched a guy come in who works in the industry to a convenience store this week and scooped up a 12-pack of Bud and what did he weigh? 12-pack of Bud and 2 beatboxes, and was like out the door, figured out we were working for the distributor in town. He's like, "Oh, we'll borrow. We work with buys beer from you guys." And I've been, I pulled, 3 back-to-backs, and I'm going to go home, drink this and light it up with a beatbox and then rip all across my day with some Budweisers after that. So then there's that side of the spectrum too, that is like still full bore. Like I need the Bud at 5% and I need the beatbox to kick the night off too. You gotta love it. You gotta love it, right?
Do we have numbers? Do we have numbers yet on the NA beers for January?
I think we will. I mean, you and Mike and Alicia are going to start doing goal planning over the weekend and into next week with clients with everything we've got going on. So I think we're going to feel more comfortable around what NA sales start to look like. They are up as well. The category is about 1.7% was the last number I saw, total beverage or total beverage alcohol. So, it is still a small sliver and still growing quickly. I do think that we're right that from our prediction episode that consolidation of power around a handful of top brands is continuing to happen as well. And you can't go into a store right now without seeing, at least the off-premise, without seeing multiple points of distribution. I do think the on-premise is still way behind. To go back to reference Matt Stanky's episode when he came on from Go Brewing and talked about how that choice architecture around NA brands in the on-premise is still lagging or lacking, and that people want to be able to drink more than just one brand. They want variety, 2 to 3 NA brands in the on-premise as well. I'm still only seeing one in most of the on-premise establishments. Or if I do ask for one, that's still just one. But
yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. If the growth on NA beer is only 1.5% in January year over year, that's going to be the kiss of death. And I'm sure they'll explain it away and say exactly what you kicked us off with, which is
spectrum amount.
Dry January is not a thing anymore. It's dry all year.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to play well, unfortunately, into our prediction.
Yeah. That piece of the puzzle around variety, they've just got so much variety in the category right now, and how much more can it take? And I don't know about you guys, but like, I don't care about the alcohol as much as I do about the carbs. Like, I'm still carb centric on my diet. That's where I feel more sensitive, is the more carbs I eat, the worse I feel. And the alcohol doesn't have the same amount of effect. So I would much rather have a light beer that has low in carbs, rather, that's 3 or 4 or 5%, rather than an NA beer that's 14 or 16 carbs. That's Bud's opinion on mine. And
for me, it's always about the taste profile, right? I just haven't found one that, no matter what category it's in, it still misses the mark, right? So it's like, hey, if I want to do this for me personally, and like you, I am looking at the carbs, right? But more importantly is that I want it to taste well, and my taste palette just struggles with it. So, and I don't know, how that bounces up against the rest of the drinkers that are looking at NAs, but I'm not willing personally to make that trade-off, right? To save a few calories, or even, and again, the NA part, dry is not in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
I mean, on nights where I don't drink, I think I'm in the same camp as you, but it's like on nights when I don't drink, I just drink sparkling water.
That's what I do too. Yeah. Carbonated soft drinks. Yeah.
I tried the non-alcoholic beers and it just wasn't doing it for me.
Nope. It's not my jam at all. Yeah. Moving to, for me, what this means to distributors is that, January, I think we got to change our attitude around that. Dry January is no longer yes or no. It is. There are people that are more and more partaking in it. It is growing, and that if we have NA brands, how you're leveraging your portfolio does matter. And that we're thinking about ways to continually incrementally grow distribution and incrementally grow, availability of the right brands in the right place. You got to think about, if you're going to stratify or cut your accounts apart into A's and B's, or 1s, 2s, and 3s, top accounts, I want to be looking at my on-premise to make sure I'm hitting multiple points of distribution in the on-premise right now of brands where I can, and then really leveraging the multiple brands that I have in the off-premise when it makes sense. If you're thinking about doing it, right now you're behind the 8 ball because we missed the biggest month of the year. But as you're moving into the rest of the year, it's always now is the next best time to plan. So that's what I'd be thinking about as a distributor where I'm planning for this in the next year, and for the remainder of 2026 as well too. The next big news cycle that I wanted to touch with you guys on too is that beer, wine, spirits for distributors is consolidating it into one network ever so more. We've got RNDC. So this is kind of an expansion on our RNDC news cycle that we've stayed on for quite some time. When RNDC shut down California, it was unprecedented. Then they lost major brands to get going. They didn't have a suitor because there wasn't anybody who wanted to pick up the brands. Sounds like that from a scale perspective, RNDC became unprofitable, weren't able to actually run the California business as an independent business unit anymore. Come to find out, there were some reasons for that. They've overinvested in a handful of other things that I'm sure somebody with way more journalistic chops than we do on the Tapped In podcast will do an actual proper story about. In swoops Reyes, right? Reyes picks apart the carcass of RNDC in California. Now, Reyes has expanded into 7 more states, agreeing to economic terms with RNDC to create a separate business unit and actually bring that whole RNDC business unit in 7 states into Reyes ownership as well. So this is a big deal, right? This isn't just one of the largest states in the country. Now it's other large states where where Reyes is already operating and expanding into a full scale liquor distributor. They're not alone either, too, right? Many distributors out there are already mixing and matching brands and styles of product across. There's none of our distributors anymore that we work with one-on-one as a service provider with VXP sell just beer or just wine or just spirits. Everybody in some way, shape, or form is mix and matching across all the categories, including NA as well too. So everybody's moving this in this direction. Everybody's got various skill sets and various portfolio makeups. But this is a big change, and it really does put Reyes in a different category as not only the largest beer distributor, but also one of the largest liquor distributors now as well. What I don't know what this does is I don't know what it does with RNDC in the states that they're not taking over, right? And how that looks like for RNDC too, because a little context knowledge for anybody listening out there, the way these liquor agreements are written is that they're usually scaled agreements across multiple states. And they want to leverage as the liquor supplier attention and also resources and dollars across multiple states in the same operators. So these things will change hands, but when they do, it's not one state at a time or one small market at a time. It's large groupings of states. So Ross, this is something we've talked about on the pod a lot. Do you think that it's hard to stay successful as an only beer distributor or spirits distributor? Or do you think that getting into these bigger and bigger brands is where we're going to see even people beyond Reyes try to get as well too? Or is this really a show and a plan that Reyes can kind of run by themselves and they're the only ones who can really run the play right now?
Well, I mean, there's economies of scale, and we're going to probably continue to see consolidation. I mean, I think you get into niche things like fine wine.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a place, especially in dense metro areas, to have a distributor that's focused on fine wine. I think that's a different sale, different clientele. So I think that still makes sense. But I think everything else is commoditizing and it's getting more efficient. But I did want to say one thing here, because I'm going to ask a really dumb question. Why wouldn't Reyes? I mean, in California, they got all the brands for free by just letting them die.
Why wouldn't they just let them die?
Why wouldn't you just let them die? And maybe that's also the answer as to why they didn't take them all.
Mm-hmm. They could have agreed to economic terms in terms of we're buying maybe the real estate and maybe the warehousing and some of the trucks, but not necessarily the brand value, the brand equity value, because there's not a lot of the economic terms haven't been disclosed, right? And they probably never will be. because also beer distributor warehouse is not set up to pick bottles and to pick, mixed cases at scale. They can do it. You can do it in, small segments, or if you're a mid-size operator, you can kind of manhandle your way through doing it on managing it. But when you're RNDC, like, you have conveyor belts, people, WMS systems that are uniquely designed to handle these kind of complexities. And that might be the reason why they actually chose to invest and purchase some of the assets, maybe the hard physical assets, rather than the intangible brand rights.
But see, the whole California thing blew my mind. I've always thought the value was the brands, not the building a conveyor belts.
Well, there's no franchise protection. So when there's no franchise protection, there's no brand equity.
Yeah, but it's hard to switch, even when they're not a franchise state. I mean, you've got that. I don't know.
Well, there's another dynamic to think about though too, is and it may vary from state to state, but those suppliers might find themselves at a crossroads where it's like, well, do I want to stay or move to in this example to Reyes, or is this an opportunity for me to move somewhere else where maybe the portfolio isn't as deep and wide, and I'll get more exposure, right? More attention. And it creates an interesting opportunity for beer distributors, right? That are looking to expand their portfolio, and they're willing to invest in their business to say, hey, listen, this is just the beginning of more, right? So we need to either kind of step up our business and take on new brands and new categories and figure out how to work within them, or I'm the next one potentially on the block that I'm finding myself, the economics aren't working, so it's time for me to exit the market completely.
It's a very different business model. It's just a very different, and it's a very different business model because it's just it's different all the way around. The logistics are different. The warehousing is different. The delivery is different. The way that you give time and attention to suppliers is different because the portfolios are incredibly more complex as well. And there's just a lot of things. And, in Michigan, they run a system where the distributor is the state, right? So it's an ADA license. It's I think they call it like an associate distributor license or something like that, where or it's appointed distributor license, where you can get appointed by the state. Now you have to hit some hurdles to be able to do that. But we were trying to figure out how to do that legally across the state as a consolidated network of AB distributors way back in the day. And one of the stories that was told to us from one of the ADAs, who was like, hey guys, like, go for it. Like, all welcome to have you come do this. There's no brand rights. There's no equity. You get paid $8 a case for delivery, which is what the state allocates for you to be a, associate and an aligned distributor to be able to do it. It's just it's a delivery fee. It's not even profit. It's just the delivery fee. And oh, by the way, you can get terminated and moved every 90 days. So like, we were the Moet Hennessy distributor of the year, got terminated because one of the other multi-state operations cut a deal to do a marketing budget back for $8 a case. And the Moet Hennessy CEO said, I'd love to keep you, but I need you to contribute at least the $8 a case. And he's like, I can't do this for free. That's all I get paid. There's no profit pool in it for me with the way that Michigan works. So I can't deliver all your cases for free. So like, yeah, no thanks. And that's just the kind of relationship that it has from suppliers to distributors. So do you think, George, though, do you think that the brand managers will really care about it, like an attention arbitrage? Because so far, if they did, they would have made, only Sazerac has made a move like that on a big liquor supplier world, right? Where it's really is leveraging attention arbitrage, and that I'm going to go to a place that has nobody and be the big dog in town. Nobody else has wanted to do that. Everybody else has wanted to stay in their little lane that they have with, Breakthrough, RNDC, Southern Glaciers, in one of those three lanes for the most part.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a trend, but I'm aware of at least one that is like, I want to go a different direction.
Yeah.
And when this transition is happening, it's the time when I can redirect where my product goes, how it's distributed. mean, and earlier to your point too about, selling wine and spirits is very different, right? I mean, it's truly negotiating and on margins, and you've got certain things that the way you get compensated back from the suppliers is quite different, or can be quite different than the way the traditional supplier billbacks work in the beer space. So to your earlier point too is that not only is it different operationally, but from a sales execution and from a supplier billback, it can be quite different, right? So there's some dynamics there that's going to change that business. But I don't know. I would imagine that it's a time for suppliers to take a look at where they're at, where they want to go, and how their current distributor, if it's in transition, do they see the upside, right? Does it fit their model, right? Do they just want to be another, vodka in a portfolio of 50 other vodkas, and in a broader portfolio of 6,000 SKUs? I mean, I'm not saying that, these organizations are amazing, right? They do know how to meet the needs of the suppliers, no matter how diverse. But, there's always going to be that personal relationship and where they feel like they're getting the best brand representation, right?
Ross, on your opera, go ahead, my man. You're going to jump in.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, the angle that we may want to think about here is, if I'm in a beer supplier or a beer supplier, probably the last thing I want is wine and spirits coming into the distributor, right? Because now you're comparing $5-6 a case to 50. So I mean, I'd be worried as a beer supplier to have that cross pollination starting to happen.
What's your biggest fear about it, do you think?
Well, I mean, if I was a beer supplier, I can't produce those kind of dollar margins. Right? And to George's other side I'll take the other side of what George was saying, which is, if the incentive to come to a beer distributor is that you're going from 25,000 active SKUs down to maybe 1,000, I'm inherently going to get more focus. I'm going to be one of 2 vodkas, not one of 200. But where is that focus coming from at the beer distributor? What's it coming at the expense of? Right? Because the other side of that is, who's losing? Who's losing attention and focus? And it's going to be the beer. So I think, putting this back to where you started, Bud, in terms of, are we going to see the trend continue about consolidation of beer and spirits and wine? And is it a good thing?
Well, that's the pushback that a lot of suppliers are making with this Reyes RNDC combination, is that they want a separate sales staff, right? They don't, and there's also an opinion out there that beer folks can't sell wine and spirits. And I wholeheartedly disagree with that. There is no reason why they can't. That is a cop-out for a leadership team or for a sales team not being willing to invest in the capabilities of somebody's attention and somebody's capabilities. Like, we can walk and chew gum and juggle if we need to, right? Like, humans are complex beings with capabilities to make decisions and do a lot of thinking. They can sell more than one thing. But it's more of like the bull bleep that used to happen before franchise protection for beer, where you can't sell one brand and another brand, or if you do, you have to build a warehouse wall between the two, because we can't have Schlitz infect Anheuser-Busch or Molson Coors, because that beer is going to make our beer bad if it's sitting in the same warehouse. It's a lot of anxiety around suppliers having fear that is misappropriated, because if your brand is great and if you do great marketing and you have the right price point and you have the right route to market, your brand is going to succeed. It's going to grow and it's going to thrive. If you don't have any of those things, then I can see why you'd be scared. But the top brands, I don't think Tito sits at night and worried about what their distributors are going to do. I don't think Sazerac sits at night and worried about what their distributors are going to do. It's those guys who don't know what they're doing that sit at night and worry about what their distributors are going to do.
Well, here's another component too, is think about this. I'm a spirits distiller, right? And maybe they're looking at the long play, right? Today I produce a vodka, but my goal is to have also a series of RTDs, right? So now we've shifted, how we go to market, right? Who's the best at delivering cans? There's the chain component, right? Who knows how to work the chains and execute there? Hey, if I'm a distillery and I've got excess capacity, the jury's still out on THC, but maybe I'm thinking about that and THC in a can and THC in a bottle. And who's going to be the best distributor partner if that's my vision for my business, right? Mm-hmm. So yes, I've traditionally been X, but now I'm going to expand that out and what's going to be my best play. So I think that some of them are likely looking at that longer term, that longer road.
They are. And the RNDC game has, they're not the RNDC game. The spirits game has largely not well suited in historical sense to do a great job with with RTDs. At the end of the day, the beer distributors are better at that RTD game right now because the category of store that RTD does really well is a category of store that the spirits folks are weak in. Don't sell a lot of products in the independent convenience channel as a spirits distributor, and that's where a ton of the RTD business is sold. They do a lot in grocery stores. I mean, that's where a lot of the RNDC or the liquor store business is done. But a ton of the incremental growth is coming in that C-store game for sure. I think for distributors, Ross, you said it right, is like, if you're looking at this and trying to decide how to get into the game or how to strategize to grow this part of your business, it's not growth for growth's sake. It's got to be stable economics, right? Steve Jessup, we aren't doing things, we're not creating activity for activity's sake. This process and product and profits have to hit the bottom line, right? So we have to find a way to make it hit the bottom line. There are going to be capability gaps. You're going to have to grow your capabilities of your sales team and your warehouse to be able to handle the complexity as well too. And complexity has its cost. Like, how do you want to manage that too? Is there any operational blueprint things on your world that you should put on, that you want to put in anybody's minds listening, like watch out to think about as a distributor as you get more and more into the space?
I mean, the cost associated with servicing wine and spirits is
it's higher.
It's not just higher; it's exponentially higher because you got the split case issue. Now you're into voice pick and WMS. And I think from a load out perspective on the trucks too, it becomes a bigger issue. Now that's compensated by larger margins, not in percentage terms, but in terms of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that's a watch out. But again, it goes back to what we've been kind of leading into since the prediction episode, which is, as a distributor, this is a hell of a good position to be in. Like, you're in the driver's seat. You have optionality, right? And we can say, woe is me, the beer industry is collapsing at 5% on an annualized basis, and all the big boys are laying people off and closing breweries. Yeah, well, consolidation's also driving, that shrinkage is driving consolidation too. And all this proliferation of craft spirits over the last, I don't know how many years this has happened. I mean, every damn celebrity's got their signature on one of them. They're looking for love. They're looking for focus. They're looking for attention. And they're looking for brand building. So again, as a distributor, every one of these situations, you're coming up a winner.
Yep.
Right? Again, I just spelled out who the loser is. The loser's your number 5 on the list of your NA suppliers. That poor guy is looking at am I getting cut this month? Well, XYZ celebrities vodka's showing up. So I guess it's time for me to look at that list of NA beers. Do I really need 10?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I just need 8.
Speaking of closures and challenges, Lester Jones, moving to our next topic. Lester Jones did a great webinar around oversupply and the consumer and looking inward on BevAlc's real problem. A couple of fun things that Lester took away that I was going to float your way. It was heavy economics, right, Ross? Right up your wheelhouse. So the industry is blamed inflation, weather, COVID, immigration, Gen Z. But Lester's take is that this is a supply problem, not a demand problem, but people are confusing the two. So his thing that he brings up is like, a lot of this growth has been fueled by cheap capital, local incentives, obsession with volume growth. I mean, case in point, our local community in Battle Creek spent $500,000 on local incentives to bring 2 breweries to downtown Battle Creek. So like the local incentive dollars have been no reason to not do a brewery, right? Or build a small brewery or build a craft, tap room in some way, shape, or form. But that's been an obsession with volume, and that beer and spirits are both guilty. And, his argument is like the legal drinking age population hasn't materially changed. The total consumption per person is relatively stable. It's what people drink, and too bad Mike's not here, but it's what people drink, not how much they drink. And Mike's been preaching that as well too, that it's all about what people are choosing to drink, better, less than, or better, less, rather than more, the same, or more, worse. So for me, like, does that vibe with you, Ross, in your world? Anything else that you want to touch on from Lester's remarks as well?
Yeah, I said it on the predictions episode. It's history doesn't rhyme, but it sure as hell, sorry, it doesn't repeat, but it sure as hell rhymes, right? And we had over investment due to low interest rates for a long time. And money was free for how many years? Was it 10?
Oh, it's basically 0% for a long time.
Zero, which, I mean, step back and think about that. The future value of money is zero. The thing that we all work our asses off and save our entire lives for is valued at zero. That don't make no sense. And what it births is malinvestment. And I'm sorry, but our industry was one of those places. And you get over your skis in terms of capital investment. And like, I mean, I didn't, have a chance to read the article, but probably should have. But if the solution is just scale down, well, that's easy to say. But if you've got all this capital tied up, you can't scale down. Mm-hmm. Your entire business plan was built on growing, and at least sustaining, if not growing, faster and further to service the debt. But the problem is the interest rates have risen. It ain't zero anymore, right? That ship sailed, and it probably ain't coming back. So not only did you have assumptions of growth baked in, but you probably weren't counting on interest rates coming up because, was it Janet Yellen at the time? I can't remember. It may have been Powell, but, it's going to be, we're going to hold interest rates low forever. And that was what they were signaling. Then all of a sudden they jacked interest rates up and, Silicon Valley Bank blows up. Don't worry, buy the treasuries. Nothing bad can happen with treasuries. Well, yeah, until you jack interest rates up to freaking, 5% in 12 months, see what happens. But on the downstream impact of that is you've made all these business decisions and all this capital allocation based on certain assumptions. Those assumptions don't exist anymore. I get it. Like, we should right size the market, and the big players are doing that. AB's shutting down breweries, MC's firing people. They're doing exactly what Lester's saying, and that's exactly right. But you can't expect these mid-tier and regional players to do the same. They have a different set of investment economics.
You had basically zero interest rate period from end of 2008 through the better part of 2015. And then again, I mean, this doesn't have the latest data source or latest all the way up to 26. This is a little bit shorter chart.
Either that or it's a premonition of an economic collapse.
No, this is specific. This is 2020, right? But and then it drops back down, to zero interest rates through 2020 from 2020 to basically 2022 to that period. So, Ross is talking about here is that when you have access to all this, basically free capital, investment is cheap. Return on capital is cheap if you can actually get the money for that cheap. So what do you do with it then? Then you can build things faster. If you can build things faster, you could do things that you might not have been able to do or might not have wanted to do or would have done if you had to pay 6 or 7% for the money like you do now. Your return on investment to build those breweries in a certain area or build those production facilities in a certain area would have been much less. So all that overcapacity is what the business is kind of grappling with. And really, he talked about too that the closures of the tap rooms, and we talked about this, Ross, on the pod before, is more a proof that it's a correction rather than it is a massive, reset in some way, shape, or form. And just this week, a brewery in the market that I was working in at a distributor, one of their brands, just sent out a notice on Facebook. We're closing our doors. We're selling everything by the end of February. And the brand's gone. Poof.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's expensive to cover the debt. And I think another way to think about it too is dropping interest rates is a way to borrow from the future to today. You're bringing forward all the investment that would have later happened, and you're bringing it to today. So you're stealing from the future. The problem is once you get to the lower bound of zero, and there was a point during COVID when I think a quarter of all the bonds in the world were trading negative, which is even crazier to think about. But we've run out of future to steal from.
Yeah.
And the breweries are caught up in it.
George, the other thing that Rosser talks about is that on-premise beer purchases are up by 2%, almost 2.6, while off-premise is down nearly 4%, and that consumer spending is over $1 trillion on food and beverage away from home since COVID. So like a lot of this, pent up COVID demand, but also some behavior shifts of people actually spending money out of home. Do you think that we've misallocated as an industry focus away from the on-premise and too much on the off? Do you think we could rebalance that back off, or do we have it right and it just kind of we're riding the wave as efficiently as possible?
I think that, again, everything seems at some point tie back to COVID here.
Yeah.
But, it obviously it crushed the on-premise. And I think it's still somewhat in a recovery mode. But let's face it, I mean, people, like their social lubricant, right? And whatever that might be, those libations are whatever they are. But that socialization is super important. And I think there's another dynamic that's going to happen this year, just coincidentally, that may really help out the on-premise and help people truly understand and come back to it. And you've got the Super Bowl, you've got the World Cup, you've got a lot of very big major events that are going to draw a lot of people out of their home because they want that socialization. They want to celebrate, right? And they're going to be out and they're going to experience that and they're going to want more. And I don't know that I could say it's a prediction, but I still feel pretty strongly that that's going to draw a lot of people out of their houses and keep them coming out.
It's impressive how many things that the country, the market in the U.S. has going for it in the beer industry for 2026. 250th anniversary of America, which is going to get tied in. We're going to see the Super Bowl commercials and all the Super Bowl flair from Anheuser-Busch. We already have seen much of it, but that's going to be all played out in the next week or two. It's 150th anniversary for AB, or for Budweiser specifically. You've got Coors Banquet still growing as well. And you've got all the World Cup activities as well. I mean, we've had to cancel 2 trips because the World Cup took all the hotel rooms that we didn't get early enough. And because we don't have our week together. And, that's going to be a ton of activity. You got the Olympics going on. It's something, it's not nothing. And the calendar for the rest of the year from a holiday standpoint looks pretty solid too, Ross, as well. So there's a lot of tailwinds in terms of out of home activity for 2026. And Georgia's right around that. And how you take advantage of that is a big deal for sure. And I would want to be paying attention to it as a distributor in the market running one of these right now too, because you don't know how it's going to play out. And if you're there for the opportunity, you got to be there for the opportunity, showing up to take the swing as much as you can.
Someone said, and I don't know if it's true, but they said that the World Cup will be like 27 Super Bowls just because of the massive amount of interest and passion behind the sport. But across the U.S., it'll essentially be like 27 Super Bowls. So that's
going to be huge.
Yeah.
It's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. It's going to be a ton of stuff. So, as a distributor, we got to maintain discipline around our portfolio, around our channel strategy, how we're going to actually leverage these opportunities. We want to be cleaning up the opportunities in the on-premise, because I do see a lot of opportunities in the on-premise over the next year. And if you have these complex portfolios, making sure that you're taking advantage of all of them in all the channels that you service as well, too. There's a huge opportunity to tie it back to the RNDC and to the Reyes thing. There's a lot of underdeveloped on-premise sales for those distributors that are selling wine and spirits that haven't made it into the on-premise as well as they could have. So that's a big opportunity too. So for me, like those are the big takeaways on that subject. Anything you guys want to end with here?
I mean, I think we called it on the prediction episodes that on-premise would do well this year.
Yeah, we did.
So I think that plays well into what George is saying.
Yep.
And I think that I'll throw one more tidbit out there. I know that we got to wrap this up, but you look at a country like Argentina, which has high persistent inflation, or historically has. There's a seriously overskewed amount of on-premise activity that happens because you might as well spend it today and you might as well enjoy your life. So if we start to see melt up, if we start to see a return of inflation, I think it's going to be different than what we had post-COVID. I think that it will drive additional consumption. So these are big ifs, but I think there's good tailwind for the first time for on-premise in a lot of years, which I think there's alignment around that, at least in this.
That makes a lot of sense. Yep, I had not thought about it that way too. Are we having a timeline for the melt up? Do we think that would happen?
I mean, I think we'll see it in assets this year.
Do we got to have a prediction timeline though?
Oh no, that's dangerous. There's again, I rag on Warren Buffett a lot, but he has a famous quote that I love, which is the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome. Good stuff. Well, if you like what we've been doing, please continue to listen, like, and subscribe. Share with your friends. We will continue to do this on a weekly basis here in the Tapped In Sales Podcast. You can also hit us up with listener questions, comments, opinions, hate mail at VXPTech, or it's info@vxptech.com. That's info@vxptech.com. We will respond there as well. Silver Fox, thanks for joining us this week. We appreciate it. You are the man. Moneyball Ross, you are the best as well too. I love you boys, and we will hear from everybody again next week. Cheers.
Cheers.